Greetings, and salutations, one and all. Welcome to a brand spanking new week right here on the night shift to DJ Kevin Stew. How you doing? Getting out of Carnival weekend here in South Florida. A bunch of people had the best time of their lives. The rest of us, we've been living the best time of our lives. Well, maybe not the rest of us. Some are yet to find it. Some are on the path to getting there. And a bunch of us are already claiming it. Kicking it off tonight, a little Touche track called Best Life. That show it is stress life. You should be living your best life. I want to say thanks to the segment sponsor, Pulse Media Group. When being in a moment is priceless, you want to give them a link. Tell them DJ Kevin Stew sent you. What can they do for you? You have a moment where you want to capture in stills or video. If you want to take it a step further, you want to do what I'm doing right here on the night shift with DJ Kevin Stew. Those of you watching on kevinstew.com, Pulse Media can take care of that. If you have a website and you want somewhere to host it, Pulse Media can take care of that. kevinstew.com is hosted on Pulse Media. Yes, best believe. My broadcasting is done. My video broadcasting is done through Pulse Media. So you can have a platform just like mine. Just give Pulse a call and say, hey, I want what Stu has. I live in my best life. I live in my best life. Of course, they'll probably tell you, listen, only Stu can have what Stu has. There's only one Stu. But you can get him a call still, 754-999-6020. Or visit them at pulseemg.com. Now, I hope you all are living your best lives, or doing what you need to do to get to that point where you can live your best life. On the phone with me tonight, I have someone who I can't even put it in words. I heard bits and pieces of her show with Melissa Jane last Wednesday. Melissa did, my sister from another mister. She did a special show last Wednesday. And my guest tonight was one of her guests that night. And oh, pardon me, I left out my listeners. Big ups to those who are listening in over in the UK. Top of the morning to you guys. One Harmony Radio. Big ups to you, King Genius, Queen Genius. Big ups, much respect. Those tuning on WGLRO with the Donnie Walker Morning Show, taking you from the sheets to the streets, from Denmark to Detroit and everywhere in between. And those on Pulse Media, PEMG TV, and of course right here at the home of the night shift with DJ Kevin Stew, kevinstew.com. Glad to have you. Couldn't do it without you. Believe me, I wouldn't even try. You have my word on that. Okay, cool. So I've taken care of those formalities. I've said good evening to most people. Those of you who are listening in on TuneIn Radio on the night shift with DJ Kevin Stew, big ups to you also. I almost forgot about you guys. Jump on into the stew pot. I invite you all to come on in. Others call it a chat room, more fancy over here on kevinstew.com. We call it the stew pot. Okay? So don't get it twisted. Like I said, on the phone is a delightful, delightful is not really giving her much justice, but I'm going to use it anyway. The most delightful, Charlene Bouie. Charlene, welcome.
Thank you so much. Well, I don't know if I'm supposed to be smiling hard or just a little bit. You have me blushing here.
Really? I'm sure you're used to it.
Thank you for the invitation. I greatly appreciate it.
Well, you know, there was someone else pulling the strings to make this happen. Although I was very much waiting for my turn.
Why, thank you.
Someone else got ahead of the game and said, "Listen, Kevin, hey," and just made it happen.
Yes, thank you so much. October is Domestic Violence Month, so this is a very important time that we get to address the issues of domestic violence, what's going on in the homes of so many people, but because of the shame that's attached to it, many times the women are not willing to acknowledge what's happening. So people like me, as an ambassador for domestic violence, I make it easier for people. I provide resources and sheltering, things to help them along that process of being able to come out. And sometimes, it's a very tough situation. And I often say, how did I just sign myself up for this? But I'm extremely passionate about supporting and helping women. My children I would overhear conversations, and my children would say, "Mom, that's none of your business. It's just none of your business." But it would be like a trumpet ringing on the inside, and I always felt compelled to do something.
Yes.
So it's hard for anyone to listen to me. I give you about 2 seconds. Somewhere in there, I am going to bring up what it is that I do. And I've been doing this for 18 years now, and I'm not tired. I mean, it's what I do.
When you say you've been doing this for 18 years now, what do you mean? You mentioned being an
As I
ambassador for against
for
domestic
domestic
violence.
violence, I advocate on behalf of women and children. And this, well, first of all, let me say to your listening audience, I am a survivor of domestic violence, and so that's where the passion comes in at. But I believe this: um, we all have what we do in life. We all have an assignment, and whatever your
Yes.
assignment may be, you do it and you do it well. Like you are a DJ and you're reaching people nationally and internationally, and you do it well. You have a respected audience. Well, my
I'd like
passion
to think
isn't
so.
as yes, my passion isn't as popular as others, but at the same time, once I came out of domestic violence, I got that passion to help other women because I recognized the shame that was attached to it. I remember I went to a shelter only once, and I was in that shelter, and I don't remember if it was 2 days or 3 days. I think it might have been 2 days. And in my time of being there, I was like, I can't stay here. I'm going back home. So I went back home to my abuser, but it took me about 5 years to come up with a game plan of saying I'm going to walk away. I grew up here in South Florida, and I moved to Washington State, lived in Washington State for 21 years. So I dealt with the fear of being away from home and what was I going to do? How was I going to survive? I was a stay-at-home mom. And getting married, that was a part of the prerequisite for me. I was not going to work outside of the home. So in the process of that, and when I decided that I don't want to live like this anymore, it took some time to come up with a plan and then execute the plan that I had come up with. And so
Right.
from that, I then realized after time had been out, time had went on, and I raised my children and taught them the rights and the wrongs. But a lot of times you have to remember, children are not listening to what we say. They're listening. They're
They're
watching what
watching.
we do.
Yes.
And so I came up with a plan, and then I executed it, told my kids. And none of this is a secret to my children. From the very beginning, my children have always known that at some point that this was going to be a subject matter that I discussed, and I include them in it. So my children support me in this. My oldest son is in the entertainment industry, and he does all of my graphics, my videos. My youngest son is a professional photographer. He does all of my professional pictures. And my daughter is a makeup artist, hairstylist. And at one point, she worked for an investigation firm, and we often would say she was nosy by nature, and someone paid her to be nosy, so she was the best employee there was.
Hey,
I
listen.
tell you,
Oh,
she could find a roach up under a bed.
listen, you do something that you're good at and that you comes naturally and you like, and you'll never work a day in
Yeah.
your life.
Yes, so,
So,
my goal was to teach my children the difference, because a lot of times kids that grow up in domestic violence home, they become abusers, or either they become accustomed to being abused. So I had to take that imagery away from them and let them see another side of life. I didn't date. I didn't have men running in and out of my home. I truly lived a productive life that was an example for my kids. And so that's what I've been doing
but
for the past 18 years. I started out with women would come to my house, and we just have conversations, nothing major, just conversations. And the conversations went from having a book club, from a good book club. I started doing conferences, and from conferences, it kind of escalated to where I'm at now.
but that's only like a summary of the last 18 years.
hmm
Your youngest child is how old?
34. My
Okay.
youngest is 34,
Your
and my middle child just turned 39 on October 10th, and then my daughter is 41.
Let me make sure to put your picture up and take mine out so that people can really have a look at you. with your 40-year-old oldest child.
I know it amazes people. They think that I'm younger than what I am. I say you should see me getting up in the morning time.
So, Charlene, but
Mm-hmm.
this is only the past 18 years. So there has to be a Charlene that existed prior to these past 18 years when you have been an ambassador, an advocate for domestic violence. And you said you're a survivor yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, see, I got married very young, so I went basically from my mother's house to my husband's house.
oh,
So there was no what I call having multiple boyfriends or doing a whole lot of dating. That wasn't my experience. I married my ex-husband and we had our children. I left South Florida, moved to Washington State for 21 years.
hmm,
But my background is prior to that is I was a fashion model. I did print work. I did a lot of voiceovers,
okay.
and I raised my children. So I was 23, if I'm not mistaken, when I moved to Washington State. I don't remember. See,
Early
I'm telling my
20s.
age now.
Let's go early 20s to just play it safe.
Yes, yes. In my early 20s, I moved to Washington State. But also, I grew up in a family where when I got divorced, I was the first divorce in my family. So I have a death did them part, but I had all of my original aunts and uncles, and no one had ever been divorced. And so I kept it a secret for about a year that I
Mm.
was divorced. And I really didn't tell on purpose then. That was by accident. My uncle called to see how things were going around Christmas time and well, what did the kids get for Christmas? And when I told him what they got, he was like, "What kind of husband do you have and who does things like that?" And then finally I just kind of told him to calm down, that I had been divorced for about a year. And then after that, they thought they were supposed to come and rescue me and,
Mm.
bring me back on the East Coast because I was an only child, an only niece, an only grandchild for many, many years. And my children actually grew up with my first cousin.
Oh,
Yeah, so I learned responsibilities after I got divorced.
okay.
So that's kind of who I am and what I've done in my life with my children. I made sure that all of my children are functioning in their strength, their gifts that God has given them. Each one of them function in that. As I stated, my oldest son is a songwriter, musician, tour manager. He's in the entertainment industry.
Mhm.
He started playing when he was about 3 years old. My daughter is a hairstylist. I was her first client. She started doing my hair when she was 12, playing with makeup and all of that. But she has very strong administrative skills.
Mhm.
And then my youngest son, he carried a camera like he did like a basketball player did. And I purchased his first camera when he was either 14 or 15 years old. So I grew my kids for the areas of strength that they operated in.
Right, right. Nice.
And, and that's something that I teach parents is that find out what your children's strengths are and work on those areas of life. A lot of times when you're coming out of a domestic violence situation, it's hard to focus on the kids because you're in survival mode. But at the same time, there is a way to come out. There is a way that you can continue to help your children process. They don't have to fall victim and repeat the cycle over again. Some kids, you have a balance that, like for me, I didn't know what domestic violence was. That was not my experience. So when I married into that type of relationship, I knew how to come out. I just was too afraid to come out. And fear is a huge factor in domestic violence. 1 in 4 women will experience domestic violence in her lifetime.
Right.
So it's not like I'm saying something abnormal. Boys are experiencing it as well. 1 of 6 boys will be sexually abused before the age of 16. So when you take those types of numbers and you deal with the general public, who are we really marrying? Do we really know?
You
And
know,
when you get married or you get in
ooh,
relationships, you're getting in relationships with the person's upbringing. We see the individuals, but what was their family dynamic? We're not taking time to find out family dynamics. We're just
right.
marrying people because he looks good or she's
She looks
pretty
good.
or we
Yeah.
have this. And when you get over into the seriousness of the relationship, you're like, what in the world have I gotten myself into? And
Yeah.
the numbers are astounding. Just so that your audience knows, every 2 minutes somewhere in America, a woman is assaulted. Every 2 minutes.
Mm.
So can you imagine? Some of them have places to go, some of them don't. And from a global standpoint, there's not enough sheltering. There's not enough beds for women to, when they leave out of those homes. Sometimes you're leaving and you're leaving in the middle of the night, or you're leaving at a moment's notice. You've not been prepared to leave. And that within itself is frightening. So on October 17th, I'm hosting an award show at the Lauderhill Performing Arts Center in recognition of women who are survivors. Some women are not afraid to express that that they are survivors and they've come out of domestic violence
Right.
situations. And so in cases like that, I like to celebrate those women, because what happens, it gives other women strength to understand that they too can come out, but we also have to let
Right.
them know what that looks like, because leaving your abuser is the most dangerous time, and if you don't have a plan, some women don't make it. And the fear, the verbal abuse, the financial abuse, all of those are factors of that takes place before a woman decides that she's actually going to leave. On average, it's about 7 times. She comes, she goes, she comes, she goes. And about that 7 times, she's made up in her mind that she's not going back. But we need to be able to have housing for women to be able to leave and feel good about where they're living.
Right. Right.
Like
Right.
I stated earlier, is I went to a shelter and I stayed there about 2 days, and I was like, I'm not living like this. So a part of what I do in my advocacy work is I'm raising funds because I would like to have an apartment building where I can bring families in, women and children, to bring them in and then be able to furnish it. I actually have a company that has told me once I get a building that they will provide the furniture for me free of
Nice.
charge.
Nice.
So
Nice.
this is a huge factor. But I tell you, trying to get people to buy into let's make a difference. Whether it's finances, your resources, the people that that know someone else, it's very challenging at times. And then when a woman decides she's going to talk about it, then she's shamed all over again. So women are not so quick to say, this is what I've been involved in. And let me say this to your listening audience, is that, we hear things like, well, just leave. And how do you stay with someone that's abusing you? By the time the fear factor kicks in, it breaks down your psyche. You don't have the strength to leave. You don't have the courage. And then if you go and tell someone that you're in an abusive environment, then you have the things that your friend says. Fortunately for me, that was not my experience. And the reason I do this is because domestic violence was not violent for me. But a little abuse is just the same as a lot of abuse because it
Okay.
was a little for me.
So
You know what I'm saying?
let me
It
let me
wasn't.
let me
Go
ask you
ahead.
this. Excuse me. Let me ask you this because we've been pretty general with I guess yes, it's the early part of the show and give people a chance to warm up a little bit and get an idea of what they're getting into with this. But let me ask you this, if you don't mind, and if you don't want to get into it, that's fine. And if you do, you can get as deep as you want to. You touched on a couple of the things that I wanted to ask you. One of them being, when you got to the shelter, was it that you took your children out of the home and you went to the shelter, or did you go to the shelter, get some help, and then get your kids? But before you got to that point, what was this domestic violence for you? And at what point in your relationship did you start to see it?
Well, I saw it from the beginning. I just didn't know what it was called. And when I left, when I lived in Florida,
Yes.
I experienced it then. To kind of give the audience a foundation. I lived in South Florida. My ex-husband and I dealt with the abuse then, and I had left the home with no intentions of returning. My mother was saying to me that I needed to be back with my husband. My children needed their father. What I didn't know is that my mother was dying. And I wasn't a hard-headed child. I was a child that obeyed and followed the rules that my mother had given. So my mother said, you need to go back, and the children need to be with their father. And so I moved to Washington State, and shortly thereafter, it started again. The difference is that it wasn't regular, but I'd like to emphasize it doesn't matter if it's once a year or once a week. Either
Mm-hmm.
way, it was not good. And so for me, it was not regular, but it did not matter. That's not what I witnessed growing up. And
Right.
so I came to a place of where I don't want to live like this anymore. But again, I was so far away from home. I didn't have friends. I really didn't know anyone, so I stayed. And then I got involved with the church, and I had a very, very good church that gave a good foundation. So from there, I had the support of my church. And then it got to where I didn't want to leave. And that was when I took my children and I to the shelter. And in this shelter, we were the three of us, there was three of us at that time, my two children. No, I'm sorry, it was three of us. I had
Mm-hmm.
the youngest child was an infant. He wasn't even a year old at that point. And I stayed in the shelter, and we were all in one room, but the bathrooms were filthy. The kitchen, it was like a common area. Everyone used the same bathrooms. Everyone used the same kitchen, and I didn't know that kind of lifestyle. And
Right.
I thought to myself, if this is what I have to do to survive, I'm going home. And I took my kids and I went back home, and I thought I've got to come up with another plan. And as time went on, I just thought I'm not staying. I waited until all the money was in the account, and I took all the money out, literally all of it, and I left and never went back. And
Wow.
to some, it's like that seems drastic. You took all the men's money. Yes, I sure did. And if I had to do that all over again, I would,
You
because
would.
it wasn't about taking the money. It was about survival. And I
Right.
didn't want my children to grow up in that same environment. So I had to stop the cycle, and that is what I did. And so now what I do, because again, my exiting was not as it was simple in comparison to what other people's exit plan looked like. Like I say,
Mm-hmm.
some people live or die trying to leave. So I now teach safe ways of leaving, what type of preparation you need to
Right.
make. Um, You know, you've got to have a support system and someone that won't judge you, because society judges people so much. But it would amaze you the
Yes.
number of women that are in domestic violence situations, whether it's verbal, physical, emotional, sexual, because husbands are raping wives now. It is not consensual. If it is not
Mm-hmm.
consensual between a husband and a wife, it's rape.
Right.
But we don't talk about those um, issues either. So this is such a it's a subject matter that takes so many different twists and turns. And when it's all said and done, what falls back on the woman is shame. How do you stay in so long? Why do you stay? Why won't you leave? And how can you leave if so much shame is attached to it? And I remember when I decided that this is what I was going to do. You know, for those who are Christians, it was like I heard the voice. God said to me, "Will you be my representative?
Mm.
Will you be transparent?" I didn't know what all that meant during that time. And I remember the first time that I told someone about having been abused, I wasn't really talking to tell. I was talking and listening to her, and I watched the change that took place in her life. And then it was probably about 5 years later before I ever discussed it again. And when I watched the lives of women change, when I say everyone talks to me,
Mm.
everyone, it's as if I wear some sign that says, "Hey, come talk to me." But the thing that I say is you must be ready. And I pretty much have a gift to determine if you're ready to leave or if you're not. And so if a woman is not ready to leave, I give her tools that if you're going to go back to your abuser, these are the tools that you need in order to survive emotionally. You need to be able to survive. You need to be able to teach your kids how to be okay and not build up hatred
Right.
and resentment. And so it's a lot of work. I mean, it's taken me 30 years to get to where I'm at now, and I still have trigger moments. And that's amazing to people, but at the same time, we have to be able to come to a place where we validate women. And if you look at the dynamics, men who are abusers, somewhere you deal with that anger issue. I talk about the theta state. The theta state is
Mm-hmm.
from 0 to 7 years old. Everything that have happened to you between 0 and 7 is stored up in your subconscious mind. And what that looks like is everything that you heard, whether it was positive, negative, you know, validation, whatever have went on between 0 and 7. And if you understand, at that age, you're not in control of what you hear, what you see, what you like, what you don't. All of those things are dictated to you. So therefore, 95% of that information is stored up in your subconscious mind.
Yes.
And in your conscious mind is that 5% where you tell yourself, "I'm going to succeed," what you like, what you don't like, your careers, things of that nature. And then sometimes the 5% is in war with the 95%. So you have to constantly tell yourself you're better than what you think. And then you have those who are what I call intelligent people. So those who are intelligent, they make great attorneys, doctors, educators. Their education does not negate the fact of what their 95% are growing up in their household is like. So you have those that say, "Well, I have a college degree, you know, I'm a doctor, I have a PhD," whether it's in education or the medical field. But when you get to the 95% of who they are and what they were taught
Mm-hmm.
during that subconscious time, that is who you're dealing with. If you think about, look at, well, you all may not have known this. There was a judge that his his peers were the boys that he abused, but he was the judge. So your titles mean absolutely nothing, and we judge
Mm.
people based on careers. We think because they have 6 and 7 income brackets, that makes them great people. Not
Right.
necessarily. It doesn't matter if you're in a lower income bracket or a higher income bracket. Your family dynamics are a major factor. We must take time to learn who people are, because if men have no respect for their mothers, surely you don't expect them to respect you, do you?
That's
We
right.
do. We don't look for the warning signs at all. And as I said earlier, 81% of white women are being abused. Only 18% of African American are, and 1% is everyone else.
Wait.
But
Give me
when
that
you look,
statistic again.
81% of white women are being abused. 18% is African American, and the 1% is everyone else. But when you look at society, it does not look like that.
No, it doesn't at all.
Not even- Yeah. And so for me, it's not about the statistics as much as it is about the women. Because if women come together and we get our healthy selves together and we understand the support of one another, there's a whole lot that we can do about helping the other women. But when you're taught that women are catty, they don't get along, they undermine each other, and some of that does happen. But you've got to surround yourself with people who are going to help you make a difference. That's far and few in between, but we are out here,
So
and
let me
so it
ask
takes.
this though. Sorry to interrupt you, but let me ask this. A lot of times, the focus when it comes to domestic abuse turns to the battered woman. And it doesn't necessarily mean physically battered, it could be emotionally battered or psychologically battered. But not so much so the men. It focuses mainly on the women and children. And the children tend to be generalized. But
hmm
the men tend to get left out.
That's because the men don't confess that they've been abused. 40% of men are being abused. That's a large number,
Wait,
and that 40
40%?
40%, yes, and that 40% are men who have been interviewed and acknowledge that they've been in abusive relationships. So imagine how many there are that haven't acknowledged it. It's humiliating for a man to say that he's been abused by his wife or his girlfriend. And a lot of times the abuse, especially if it's emotional abuse, they kind of dismiss that because there is no hitting, but yet there is manipulation. You're manipulated, where you don't want to have an intimate relationship with your spouse or your partner. You have, you take care of the kids. I go to work every day, or there's the narcissistic person who finds a way to blame the spouse for everything. If the husband does something or the wife does something and that wife manages to say that it's the husband, and after a while that breaks down a man's psyche. And so when you see him, there is so much of he's carrying such an insecure presence about himself, it just doesn't look good. It does
Right.
not look good on a man who's being abused. So therefore, he doesn't talk about it. And if you try to identify that that's what's going on, they don't acknowledge that either. Because men are supposed to be strong. They're the
Right.
providers. They're the protectors. And when you get with an aggressive woman, and again, that man was so busy looking at the exterior that he did not do the homework of what is her family dynamic. How did she grow up? What was her relationship with her mother? What was her relationship with her father? If she had a father that she grew up with. So one of the things that I teach is we must understand family dynamics, because you're not just marrying the individual,
You're
you're
marrying the
marrying
family.
what they grew up in, their family values. Can some people change? Absolutely. But it's a lot of work.
Yes.
It's not, If you grew up where your mother yelled and screamed at you, and then you end up with a woman that's yelling and screaming, that becomes your normal. Or if you
Yes.
grow up in a house where you're ignored and your mother ignores you, your family ignores you, you end up in a marriage where the woman does not talk to you. And so that's normal.
Mm-hmm.
So the cycle continues to repeat itself, and then what you end up doing is you begin to have children, and you're teaching your children the same thing. It amazes me of couples that say they stay together because of the kids, and the kids grow up and going, well, why didn't you get divorced? We were miserable. So there are so many
Right.
different dynamics that have to be taken into consideration. You have to know some of the signs, and what are those signs? Some of them are um, being pushed and slapped, kicked or choked. A- And the signs didn't always automatically start with hitting. It's verbal. And
Mm-hmm.
that verbal abuse is setting you up for the physical. But not, let me say, not all times is the physical, this emotional abuse turns into the physical. Sometimes the emotional abuse is so damaging that it's paralyzing as well.
Right. I I spoke to an artist that she's a reggae artist, and her album Reggae Prescription, her name is Jie, and she talks about her experience through her music, and her album Reggae Prescription pretty much spells out different scenarios in or reflecting on her life where she talks about these things. And then you also have other people who are right here in South Florida that are doing amazing things, and their story is it's just mind blowing. And one of the people that come
Hmm.
to mind is CJ Love. And for I first spoke to CJ, uh, had to have been around about a little over 8 years ago, and she put her whole story in a book called Behind the Mask.
Hmm.
And her story started with abuse as a child, and she was abused by family members, physically abused, and she it moved from physical to sexual, all this abuse. And it wasn't until she got into her adulthood, and one said no more, and two met someone who said, I am going to help protect you. So she was one of the lucky ones.
Yes, because that's not the norm. After a while, your psyche doesn't allow you to make you feel worthy of of healthy love because you become so accustomed to the corruption
Mm,
of relationships that, again, it takes work to change your way of thinking, how you see yourself, how you see people, how you see men. It takes a lot of work to um, to make the complete change,
right.
because the change is not just leaving the environment. You then got to change how you feel about things, how you see people. Some people become negative, some become protective. Um, I was one where I can talk a lot about myself because I'm not ashamed. I can't talk about my clients
Right.
and the people that I assist because I never know who's hearing me. And
Right.
so I don't ever want to give um, some examples or scenarios that's too close to people that I've assisted.
Right.
So
Right.
a lot of times I talk about myself in third person, or sometimes I talk directly. I've become. Here's what I say about Melissa.
Mm-hmm.
Most of what I do, I did privately in groups that I facilitated.
Right.
And Melissa, her first interview of me, which was in March for my Women's History event, she had me so comfortable that I just was running, what I call running off at the mouth.
Right,
And
right, right.
once she did the editing and sent the video over to me, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I said all that. Like, oh my God. So that the audience understand that is I was sexually, physically, emotionally abused with 10 years of memory lapse. See, but I don't have any shame about that because that was not my fault.
Right.
What I did was I got the help that I needed in my adult life, but I was extremely protective of myself.
Mm-hmm.
I drove everywhere. Very seldom did I ride with anyone else because when I'm ready to go, I'm ready to go.
Right.
And if I felt uncomfortable, I would tell my friends, I'm not feeling this. I'm ready to go, but I'll give you about an hour. And if you didn't want to leave when I was leaving, I left you.
Right.
But it wasn't abruptly. I told you ahead of time. Because at some point you learn how to protect yourself if someone else isn't going to protect you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I just learned the do's, the don'ts, what worked for me, and it did not matter to me that it did not work for someone else, because if I didn't believe in me, how do I expect someone else to?
Right.
And so you have to get to a place where you can take care of you emotionally. People who are financially stable, some of them hide behind their money, but there's a lot of dysfunction that's going on in the home.
But
And
you
then
can
when you
only hide for so long.
Pardon me?
You can only hide for so long.
Yes, but when you have money hides a lot of things. See, I deal with two types of clients. I have those who live what I consider to have an everyday life.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have some clients that are well into a 7-figure income bracket. I have two clients in particular that can write off any vision that I come up with. And I have a long vision for women coming out of domestic violence, whether it's physically, emotionally, or sexually abused.
Right.
But because of who manages their money,
mm-hmm.
they would want to know where is it going and for what purpose.
Right.
And they're not good liars. So since they're not good liars, they can't come up with reasons of where that kind of money is going. So the most they can do is come to my workshops or support my workshops where it's under $200.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There was another woman, her husband told her, he sent her shopping, he told her to go to Neiman's, and she went to Saks. And I can't begin to tell you what that looks like. So when you see women in their designer clothes, their Jimmy Choos, their Chanel, that does not mean that they're happy.
Yes.
And we're so materialistic that we want the material things, not understanding what's happening with us on an emotional level. Emotional happiness is much better than being in an environment where you're dictated when you can go, when you can't, what to wear, what not to wear. We look at people and we look at the cars that they drive, the clothes they have, and the shopping and the trips. And in some cases, all of that is superficial.
Yes.
So before we judge one another, we really need to sit and have conversations, get to know one another. I don't let people talk to me about other women. Because if you're talking to me about other women, you'll talk to me about me as well.
You'll talk to them about you, yes. Yes.
And so sometimes I make people uncomfortable, but I have to be able to live with me. Some people think I'm superficial. It's like, oh, my gosh, you just can't be that happy all the time. Well, I am. I'm happy all the time.
Well,
and
do they know where you're coming from, though?
Yes, and when I'm not happy, I stay to myself. Because I can be very confrontational at times, positively and negatively, because I don't give anyone permission to violate me ever again.
Right.
Ever. I'm not saying that you won't violate me. I just won't give you permission.
Yes.
So people may try it, but that comes from the 10 years of memory lapse. My first abuser was when I was 3. So to take all of those different dynamics and wrap them up to one, but guess what? I'm not the only one. I'm just willing to talk about it. And it's not a subject matter that I talk about all the time, but I do when it's necessary. And I know that there is someone listening to me right now that said, but how can I get out? What do I do first? You get an
Yes.
extra set of keys. You get an extra set of your children's school records, birth certificates, marriage certificates, and you give those things, bank cards, and those who are on public assistance get an extra copy so that when you're gone, you may not have time to go back and get the things that you need. So you take those things and you give them to someone and let them put them in a safe place. But you get with someone that won't judge you if you decide to leave your abuser and you go back. Someone has to be able to understand the psyche of all of this. And I often say it's no difference to some woman who is allowing her spouse to cheat on her. You still feel bad. You still feel violated. But we don't want to talk about that. It's like, well, it's easier to be with a cheater than it is someone that's abusing you. And when women really tell the truth and you come up and be naked about the truth, it still hurts. It still violates you. So somewhere we've got to get together and validate who we are. And who can better do that than other women who have been abused that can help walk you through a healthy environment. And it's not easy. It's not you walk out. When you walk out, that's the first step. When you leave, that's the first step. And when you have children, you then have to do the work on your children, do the work on yourself. See, my focus was my children first. Because I figured in myself is I will get it together. I'll figure out how to get it together, but let me help my children.
But
And the first
typically,
thing
a mother will typically think like that, though.
the only thing that I can say is that, and to not be so deep for the listening audience.
Oh, my listening audience go very deep, so we
But
don't do shallow here.
I am an ordained minister, so I believe that this was my life. This was destined for me. Was it my mother's fault? No, it wasn't. People, you are in environments and you don't know who you are with in those environments. And in those environments is where the violation comes, the negative words that have been spoken, because as I stated, I was sexually, physically, and emotionally abused. So therefore, that was not my mother's fault. She didn't have any idea of the environment that I was in. It appeared to be a nice environment, but when I was alone and when she wasn't there, it was something different.
Behind closed doors, yes.
So what I say is that God knew at some point that I would get the help that I need, that I would change my life, I would begin to think healthier, because this was never my fault. It was never my mother's fault. And I say to some kids, you've got to forgive your parents. Forgive what they don't know. Sometimes you assume that the parents know, or the abusers that have violated you. Abusers are very sneaky. They're slick. They abuse you in the presence of your parents and dare you to say anything, and the parents never know. So sometimes kids grow up thinking, my mom did know, or my dad did know. Sometimes they did not know.
Right.
And so you have to learn how to release them and let that part go and bring about healing for yourself. If you spend your adult life blaming someone else that may not have known, then at what point does your healing come through? At what point do you forgive yourself? At what point do you
Yes.
forgive the environment? Because we don't want to talk about forgiveness, but forgiveness is a huge component for us to heal and move forward. Because once you forgive yourself, forgive the situations that took place, then you are better at moving forward. Because forgiveness is not for the other person. Forgiveness is for you. Because if you
Mm-hmm.
stay angry forever, then how do you become a productive citizen?
Right.
How do you see life from a positive aspect? You don't. Because you're too bitter, you're too angry. It doesn't make you a good boss. It doesn't make you a good student. It doesn't make you a great teacher. Whatever your field of work may be, if you're so bitter based on the past, how are you a productive citizen? How do you manage well? So again, we deal with that cycle over and over and over. So I say to people, you've got to find some space within yourself of how to forgive yourself,
Mm-hmm.
how to forgive the situation and be able to move forward. And because when children are involved, then you got to teach the kids as well. We
Right.
look at all this violence that's going on, and the violence with kids are getting younger. Some kids are violent in first grade. And I'm thinking, my Lord, well, what's going on in the homes? It's all this
Yes.
anger and rage. And we're creating one generation after the next. And so, again, the event that I'm doing at the Lauderhill Performing Arts Center is I'm taking what is considered to be an ugly subject matter and I'm creating beauty with it. It's
Mm-hmm.
the title is Beauty Behind the Lipstick, and that's the strength of a woman. And
Right.
we make up in our minds that we're going to leave or we're going to be healthy or we're going to get our education, whatever the case may be. When we make up in our mind to turn our lives around, there is nothing that will stop us. When you decide you're going to be a great parent, it may be challenging, it's difficult, but you make up in your mind that you're going to be a good parent.
Yes.
You read books, you watch plays, you watch television programs. You have to do the work to make the change. It won't come because, you're just thinking about it. There's things that you must do. And sometimes it's very challenging to make that transition of change. But you continue to press forward. You continue to be with people that can encourage you to do better. I have moments where I just don't want to be bothered. I don't want to go from stage 1 to stage 2, but I allow myself that time. And I say to the listening audience, allow yourself time to fail. Just don't stay there. Allow yourself time to
There you
feel bad
go.
and hurt and cry, and wonder, how am I going to survive? Where am I going to go? If you allow yourself time to mourn that, because mourning is a part of the process.
Yes.
Just don't stay in the process. If you are
Move
around
through it.
people
Yes.
and they're saying things like, well, you can't this or you can't survive and it's going to be challenging, you need you a new set of friends because you can come out. You can start your life over. It does not matter what level of abuse that you have experienced, what level of rejection you have experienced, you can turn your life around. You can. You have to fight. I even feel like someone is listening and crying, saying, but how? I know it's tough.
Mm-hmm.
I know you can't see your way out, but you can come out. Have a plan. Create you a plan. Get with someone that you can trust and say, I want to leave. I want to change my life. And if you feel like they can hear you, then you trust that. And say, will you help me? I want to go. Will you help me? And if I go back to my abuser, will you help me when I come out again? Find someone who can help you.
You're the first person that I have come across that actually mentioned that part as a real part of getting out of violent or out of domestic or an abusive relationship, that part where you go back into it, and you mention it as a real part of the process, and
Because it is that's
yes,
and when you, and let me say this to the audience is, if you've never been in an abusive relationship before, you have no idea what we have gone through.
mm-hmm.
You have no idea what we think and how we feel. So if you're someone that has never been in an abusive environment, never say things like, "Well, I'll never be abused by a man. I'll never let a man hit on me," because you don't know what your girlfriend is going through. You don't know what your mother, your family member. Because see, my children didn't know any of this. They didn't
Right,
see it. They didn't witness it. Throughout the time of my marriage, my children didn't witness the abuse. They knew something happened because they can feel the energy in the house, but they did not witness it. And so what I say to people, don't be so quick to pass judgment, because you don't know who has been abused, whether it's emotional abuse or physical abuse.
right,
And what the message that sends when you hear, let's say you were my friend, and you said to me, "I'll never let a man hit on me." Girl, you better get out of that house. You better do this. So for
mm-hmm.
me, subconsciously, I'm saying, I know I can never come to you. Why? Because you're already passing judgment. Because you're
Right,
saying what you would never do. We don't know what we will never do. And for the person who says, "Well, I will never let a man hit me," you've never run across one that will. That's why you can say you never will. There are men who are extremely charming. They're charming. They'll give you what you want. They'll woo you until they get you into that place of control. And then what? I'm not talking speculation. I'm talking about what I know, and I'm talking about the people who come to me. If I
right,
told the secrets of which I hold, I'd be a wealthy woman.
yeah,
But people trust me to tell me. It does not matter what society says. It does not matter to me for the people who think they know me.
mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter to me anymore what they think or how they feel. This is my passion. This is my walk of life. And this is my duty to help those that want to come out. I just ask people that can, if you're not going to attend the show, make a donation. Help me make a difference. Don't pass judgment on the women. How do you do that? You can go to www.coffeebreakwithcharlie.org. You can make a donation. You can buy a ticket. You can prevent someone else from going through what you say you will never go through. Put your money where your mouth is, and quit
Mm-hmm.
talking about the women who are in it.
Right,
Because people, I'm telling you, they want out. I wanted out, but I was miles away from home. I was in another state. The
and you
culture
didn't
in
really know how
Washington.
to do it.
No, I didn't. I didn't have a clue. I went from my mother's house to my husband's house. So I didn't know what that looked like. I was young. I was in my 20s.
Right,
But what I can tell you is I figured it out. And when I figured it out and I became healthy and my children were functioning and doing well, I then figured out, how can I help someone else that they don't suffer through the years of it as I did.
let me ask you this: where did you see evidence of the abuse that you were getting affecting your children, although they didn't
Um,
witness the abuse?
I would say yes,
How
because
so?
you can feel the energy. That's about the best way to
Mm-hmm.
explain it. You can feel when a house is happy. You can feel when there's contention.
Right,
You can feel when there is no talking in the house. You can feel that. So therefore, I felt like as much as I did to keep a normal household, because see, I didn't want to work outside of the household because of my experience growing up being a latchkey kid. part of my prerequisite of getting married is I'm not working outside of the house. I will stay within the budget. I won't go over the budget, although I failed at that from time to time. But for the most part, I stayed within the budget. I made sure that I did the cooking, I did the cleaning. I was a wife. See, we don't want to be wives. We want the title of a wife, but we don't want to be a wife.
Well, has the definition of wife changed over the years?
Absolutely, it has. Because being a wife is, and I believe this, I'm a little old school, so don't judge me.
This is why I ask you that question. Because hearing you speak, it sounds like you're coming from the place of the traditional wife, and I use that loosely.
Yes. I mean, yes and no. Because I'm 60. Well, I'll be 60 on the 22nd of this month.
That's 61. Let me tell you the numbers, ladies and gentlemen. That's 16.
I grew up where the women in my family didn't work. So I never wanted to work outside of the home. I always wanted to do what I saw my aunts do. My aunts were homemakers. They provided for the home. They traveled. They shopped and had, tea parties. So I thought that is what I was going to do.
Right.
I never had a desire to be a career woman, ever. So I believe that women are to be caregivers to their children, and men represent a level of strength, and it gives, when you have two parents, you have balance. Providing, you have two healthy parents. You have
good
balance.
luck finding that these days.
That's my point. That is why I'm saying. Now, again, I believe that it's possible. I'm not saying everyone is perfect.
Absolutely.
But I believe that it's possible. But where that comes in at is, what are you looking for? My friends often, my brother says to me, "You're never getting married. You're too doggone busy." I say, "Well, a busy man will find me, and we will slow down together." That makes sense.
I love it. I love it.
But what I have learned is I know who I am now.
Yes.
Prior to that, I didn't have a clue. I had ideas, but I know that I advocate on behalf of women and children. I know that I'm a Christian and I'm going to church. So a man that does not go to church, does not have family values, I'm not interested in him. And here's what I also will say, is a man who really knows a woman knows who he can manipulate and knows who he can't. And I'm talking about a man who knows women, that study women.
Yes.
And you hear people say, "Well, that doesn't make sense. Then why do we have pimps?"
Exactly.
Why do we have pimps?
There you go.
Because that man has studied a woman.
Yes.
So therefore, a man who's looking for a one-night stand, he's not looking at me because I'm not a one-night stand. I have structure in my life. I'm disciplined in my life. And I know what I want. I'm going to enhance his life, and he is going to enhance my life. And if we're not enhancing each other, then we're not going anywhere.
Right.
And that doesn't take a lifetime to figure out.
But it takes some work to recognize that is what you want. It takes some work to recognize who you are, to be able to say, this is what I want, this is what I'm working towards. And if you're not on board with this, then deuces. See you.
Absolutely. And let me say, for this event, I have friends that are coming in from California, South Carolina, and Atlanta. And my California friends have started to come in already. And so I was saying to her, I said, I'm really okay in being single. I am fulfilled within myself. Do I want to get married again? Absolutely, I do. But I've learned lessons. And so in learning those lessons, I'm okay being by myself. My house is always clean. I often say, I haven't cooked in so long, hopefully I still remember. but that comes from, again, this has been 30 years in the making.
Yes.
I started in my 20s. I knew that there was more to life than what I was experiencing. And my experience, I'm not ashamed of. We have to be able to take the shame away for things that we did not cause.
Right.
And when you did not cause those things that have happened to you, you can be empowered. There is a different way of life. It just takes work. Even for men who are in relationships, I have some friends that they're in relationships they absolutely don't want to be in. I'm like, well, why not leave? You're the man. You can leave.
You
You
see,
can
that is
start
just
a
it. It is just as much of a struggle for a man as it is for a woman.
Absolutely.
And our
Absolutely.
society does not recognize some of these things that men go through and think
Mm-hmm.
that, oh, you're behaving this way. What kind of sissy are you?
Yes.
You know?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
And,
and
I
then comes the
find
name calling and the stereotyping and whatever
you
else
have
that goes along with it.
you have to give men the same. Well, I give men the same tools that I give women.
Right.
You don't want to leave the house. You don't want to leave the kids, but you're not doing the kids any good. What you're teaching them, you're teaching your daughters to take a man that and be subjected to the same things that you are. You're teaching your sons the same thing. So you're not teaching them healthy behaviors. It's the same pattern, and we're repeating the cycle all over again.
And it also doesn't matter if you're in a heterosexual relationship or a homosexual relationship. Abuse
Absolutely.
is abuse in a relationship, whichever way you slice it. And it happens
Absolutely.
across the board.
And then you also have the disability. So it's not just heterosexual, homosexual. You also have disability abuse as well.
Yes.
I've seen so many different components of this that if I had one wish, like one wish right now, if I was granted one wish, it would be that someone would give me an apartment building that I can help rescue them because I get it.
You know,
Everyone does not want to stay in those environments, men and women. They want out. But men want to come out and don't want no one to know that
no,
they were in.
right, right.
And so in cases like that, you need to be with other men in your income bracket, other men that have been in it so that you can be transparent. Because if you're lying to yourself, then you're not going to be made whole anyway.
Right.
You'll end up being led astray by other women. And when for men, all of your friends are females, then you're not getting the proper information.
Right. This
Because
is true.
men have a level of strength that women just don't have. We have the tenacity to be able to stick through some things, but I'll never be a man. I will be a woman all the days of my life, and I like being a woman. And I know that I need man in my life, but not any man.
Right.
A man of strength, a man of character, a man who's focused and not intimidated with what I do. Because me changing and not helping women, that's not going to happen. Because if I had someone to rescue me, I wouldn't have stayed in it 5 years too long.
Right. You
But
know,
I didn't know what it looked like. I didn't know how to articulate what I was feeling, what I was thinking. But when I got it, I was out. And when I left, I never looked back. Never looked back.
I'm going to connect you with someone across our neighboring county line. Heading north. She's in Palm Beach County. She has been on the show, probably one of the very first domestic violence shows that I did. Well, CJ was it was the very first. In more recent times, one of the most recent domestic violence shows that I did actually. And she's been on the show in other capacities, but when one of her most powerful appearances on this show, Sylvia Sharps, And she doesn't have any problems with me mentioning her name because
Uh-huh.
she speaks out and that she's an advocate for women and children day
Mhm.
in, day out. She works with children right now at the Salvation Army downtown West Palm Beach.
Mhm.
And she is also a survivor, a domestic violence survivor. And she is lucky enough or blessed enough. And when I hear you talk, I hear her because she's also a
Mhm.
minister. And one
Yeah.
of the big differences with you and her is that she has managed to get blessed by having this giant of a teddy bear as her husband. A man who used to play Canadian football, was in the Canadian Football League, and big dude, just a
Uh-huh.
teddy bear.
Mhm. And so, and I say somewhere she became healthy.
Oh,
And in her
yes. Oh,
healthy,
yes.
in her healthiness, a man that's healthy found her attractive. I
Yes.
often say men are looking for female versions, expressions of themselves. And what I mean by that is someone that can cultivate who they are. They have a vision, and can I share my vision with you? Can I share my heart
Mm-hmm.
with you?
Mm-hmm.
And in sharing my heart with you in my times of being vulnerable, that you don't take those times and you work them against me.
Yes.
You say things that when I'm vulnerable, you say those things and then you turn against me and you say something else. You
Mm-hmm.
use my weakness and you take them and you destroy me with them. But in time, men are looking for women that can really cultivate and they grow together.
Yes.
And when you get the trust of a man, when a man truly can trust you, you're good. So you
Mm-hmm.
can conquer the world together.
Oh, yeah.
And that's going back to that old school. That's that old school part of me. I'll believe that until someone shows me something different. But when I become healthy, I'm healthy. I'm single by choice.
Right.
I'm not looking. I'm not looking for a man. I'm not going to the place where men are. He will find me in my day-to-day duties.
Mm.
Whether it's going to the mall, going to the store, going to church, doing what I'm not somewhere out searching and being that person,
Right.
if that makes sense. And
Yeah.
here's what I also know. For those who are listening, there are many people that feel the same way I do. We're in a society where girls are going to the restaurants where the men are and to the clubs where the men are. Like, that's just too much work. Like, just live, just live your everyday life.
And,
One of the other things that I teach
mm-hmm.
younger women is just, well, I want to be married to an NFL player. What do you know about football?
Not a
Nothing.
thing.
Absolutely nothing. Do you really think a football player is looking for you and you know nothing about his passion?
Right. And
You know,
you see,
we
these are the things that we miss in our daily walk. We really do.
mhm,
We look at what we want based on what society says is the thing to have.
mhm,
And we
mhm.
miss out on what we want based on what our heart says we want. Or
Right,
what our spirit says we should have. And so we
right,
end up going to the wrong places, pretending to be someone that we are not,
right,
in order to
right.
find this thing that someone else says that you should have, instead of
Right.
discovering or recognizing self and moving from there.
And that's why I said to you, I like me now.
Listen,
And
if
I
you
take
don't, who
very
is
good,
going to?
yes, and I take very good care of me. I love
Yes.
dining out. I love nice things, and you can't come along and do less for me than I do for myself.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't equate to have a balance. But at
Right.
some point, you've got to say to yourself, who am I? What do I want? Not
Mm-hmm.
what
Mm-hmm.
society says. What do I want?
Right.
See, when when I was going through all of that, I didn't date. And that is crazy to people. But my children lived in the house with me.
Mm-hmm.
So my children can attest, men wasn't calling my house. Men weren't visiting my house. My focus was to make sure my children had a balanced life. I invested my time into my children. So now that my children are adults and live in other states, guess what? It's my time now.
Right.
I'm not in no hurry to date, be married. I'm not in a hurry for that.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that from the purest place of my heart. I'm good. I'm good. And I don't make no excuses about it. I like the car I drive. I like where I live. I like my life.
Mm-hmm.
I like what I do when I help empower women. Everything just about everything connected to social services, there is not money involved in that. I put on excellent events because I believe when a woman feels good, she can do better. You give us some lipstick and get our hair just right, we can have on a pair of jeans and a T-shirt. But give us that right lipstick in our hair, we're good. Rather than I'm on somebody else's hair, we're good. So I want the women who are listening to understand it's not all ugly. It feels ugly now.
Mm-hmm.
But if you could just breathe, if you could just come up with you a plan of where you're going to go, what you're going to take with you. When I decided to leave, I left everything, the house, the furniture, everything. I was out. Me and my kids, I was gone. And I never went back.
There you go.
Now, that took some time. But I had made up in my mind, I cannot have another generation of children the same way. I've got to do something different. And I did. So I say to the listener, it is possible. But don't make a hasty decision. And if you decide to go back, don't beat yourself up because the fear of it is real. People say craziness, but the fear is, can I go out and do this with my children? See, nowadays, what I did, if somebody called the police, I could have been in jail because I worked at night for the airline. I left my children at home by themselves because my ex-husband, who lived down the street, would not take care of the kids. I still had to work. How was I going to provide? Can I tell you the stress level? Because where I lived and where my church was and my friends was about an hour away.
Right.
And so I didn't have no options, none. But I say now, thank God everything went well for me. But it takes hearing my kids tell these stories. When you hear my children tell the stories, you realize, oh, this really was a balanced life. My children didn't let anyone in the house. They looked out for one another. We played games. And when I say games, it was like, this is what you don't talk about. Because this is what we have to do to survive. And I was very detailed with my kids. I didn't keep secrets. There is nothing anyone could come along and say to my children that they don't already know. I took the power away from society. I took the power away from the naysayers and the people who thought they knew me and thought they knew what they knew, and they didn't know anything. Everything that went on in my household, my children know.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't walk up to my kids and say, well, I heard your mom did this or your mom did that. And if I did, it goes, yeah, what's your point?
There you go.
We have to empower our kids as well, but you also have to know what that looks like, empowering them. I had said earlier, I just believe for me, this is not for everyone else. I want to be clear. This is not for everyone else.
There's
Some
no
people
one
go to
size fits
medical
all.
school. Yes, they go to medical school and you're proud about being a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
You go to law school and you're proud about being an attorney. Well, I went through abuse and I'm proud about who I am, how I came out, and I can help someone else. And you can't take that away from me.
Yep.
At all. At all. My sole responsibility, other than raising my children and having a healthy environment for myself, is to go and to help other women come out and let them see what that looks like. I often say, I don't look like my life. I don't look like the things that I have suffered through. But in my workshops that I facilitate, I'm very detailed.
Yes.
I'm very detailed there because that is where the people want the help. When I talk it publicly, those are people who are interested and those are people who are being nosy.
Mm-hmm.
But in my workshop, those are people who want to know how to get out. What does it look like? What did you feel? What were you thinking?
Charlene,
And
real quick, pardon
mm-hmm.
me. Um, and let me say this before we continue. I didn't give out the number for the show tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It was not intentional, but most of you should know it already, and I'm pretty sure you were busy either listening to Charlene or taking notes and listening to Charlene and had nothing that you wanted to call her and say. But we're going to get some contact information for Charlene in a minute. I see some people in the stew pot. One person had commented and said, you don't judge someone until you've walked in their shoes. You don't know where they've been or what they've been through, and that cheating is a form of abuse.
Yes.
And boy, let me tell you, if if the stories that I could tell a couple weeks ago, I shared a little bit about myself, and I have cheated in the past. I had to come to recognizing that that was something that I had done and fessed up about it. And it's 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 crazy to want to say that publicly, but listen,
Mm-hmm.
anybody can go to my partner and try to tell whatever story they want to tell her. Go ahead, feel free, but make sure that you don't change anything in that story,
Right.
because it's a story that I am telling too. So make
Right.
sure you get it right. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right.
But it took some
Right.
time to get to that place. It took some work to get to that place. And I'd I'd love to talk to your kids, really, to be honest,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
to get the story of what it was like growing up for them, that experience that they had. Because yeah, you can tell one part of it, what you've seen, but
Mm-hmm.
hearing it from them, boy, that's something else.
Because I can say for my daughter used to feel like, Mom, you just forgive everyone. Some people are not worthy of forgiving, like because she was angry for a
Mhm.
while because she just thought she felt like I should not have forgiven, and I should have been angry, and I wasn't. I clearly understood that a time was going to come and this was going to be my lot in life is to help empower other women. What is my legacy? My legacy is to say that a woman came to me and I was able to assist her. If I didn't have the resources, that I was able to point her into the right direction of a facility that had the resources. But
Mhm.
because I know a lot of what we need based on the things that I experience, that's why I'm saying I do the workshops that I do. I host the events that I do
Right,
to
right.
raise money to be able to have us all in a place and restore our dignity to us. Because no matter what your income bracket may be, your dignity is still stripped away from you. You
Yes.
just dressed up in pretty clothes.
Right.
But what's going on in your emotions?
Mhm.
And it does not matter whether you are in political arena, whether you are in education, sanitation, cafeteria worker, it's all the same. And we find that very challenging to agree upon. But if you
Mhm.
get some of those women in private quarters and sit down and have conversations, you'll hear it's all the same.
Mhm.
It's all the same.
Yeah.
We all want to be loved. We all want to be validated. And we
Yes.
all want someone to care about us. When you hear people say that, well, I don't care if someone loves me. I'm okay by myself. That's not the truth. That may be a truth that you have told yourself. But we all want to be loved. If not, then quit dating. I thought of something else, but nevertheless, we have to be able to tell ourselves the truth. When you can tell yourself the truth, then you're better off. And sometimes people are cheating because that's what they do. And it's about what's going on within your own self.
Right.
What you're thinking, what you're feeling. Most times it doesn't have anything to do with the partner. It is about what you are feeling within yourself. And it's when you it gets to that point where you get busted, then you want to tell.
Yeah.
But I say this, confessing about infidelity or betrayal in relationships, that takes a lot of work.
Oh.
That's a lot of work because now you got to restore trust where it was destroyed. And then if you are the person that did the violation, then every time that your partner says, well, where are you? You've got to eat it up because you violated.
Yeah.
If you intend on making the relationship healthy again, and eventually it will restore itself and be okay. But there's, like I said, the work has to be done.
You have to put in the work.
Yeah,
now,
well, I commend you on doing the work.
Thank you. Talking about the work. And I told you this time would go by real quick. Talking about doing the work. Coming up this Thursday, October the 17th, I'm going to put up a flyer and you just say what it is and what it is for. Go.
Okay. Coffee Break with Charlie is a women empowerment organization. I advocate on the behalf of women and children. I go to courts. I help provide sheltering. I point them in the right direction. I facilitate workshops myself to teach how you do those things. So October 17th, we're having a event where we're honoring women who have been survivors. Two of the women are survivors. One grew up in the house of domestic violence. And so we're having a haute couture fashion show. We have the award ceremony first, and then we have the couture fashion show, so that when you leave, you don't leave feeling weighted down because you've heard some stories, but you feel good when you leave. You get to see the fall fashion. And this just isn't any kind of fashion show. This is a show where the designers have come from Paris, New York, and around the United States, and we come together and we celebrate each other, and we help to restore those women and those who, because of the amount of people that will be there, we don't know who victims are in the room. You don't know who survivors are in the room. But when you come together and the power and the energy that's inside that room, you leave feeling good. You leave feeling like you can conquer the world, and you say, I want to help women. You may not be that woman, but you can help some other woman. And as I stated, if those that can't afford to purchase a ticket, make a donation. Whether that donation is $20, $5, $1. And I say that our President of the United States, the 44th president, won elections based on $1. So $1 can make a difference in the life of a woman when it's placed in the right place. So I say for those that can attend, please make a donation. Help empower that next woman. And if I could go all the way, do you have an apartment building you want to give me? I will take it. A friend used to say, a closed mouth will never be fed, so I put it out there.
There you go.
You have a house you want to give, you have an apartment you want to use as a tax write-off. I'm 501c3. I have a CPA, and a bookkeeper. I'm totally legal.
There you go.
But all jokes aside, I would love for the people to come out and attend this event. I'm making history in this. Eunice Johnson from Ebony Fashion Fair. She did this for well over 50 years, and she went around the country raising money for charities. And all I'm doing is taking up that same cause because women, we need to feel good. We need to know that we can make a difference. And so this is a way of raising money because my ultimate goal is to have housing for women and children.
And proceeds from the ticket sales for this event and the donations is going
Yes.
towards that.
Yes.
Nice.
And again, that can be done at www.coffeebreakwithcharlie.org. And Charlie is Charley. You could Google me. You could find me on YouTube to see some of the things that I've done. I've done skydiving as a fundraiser. I've done some pretty interesting things to help raise money for women and children.
And so tickets are $125. This is happening at the Lauderhill Performing Arts Center in Fort Lauderdale. And you have some honorees.
Yes. Chessa Ray Fry lives in Tennessee. And so she's coming from Tennessee here. And then we have Joycine Gura, she's in Oakland Park. And then we have Nadia Saad. Nadia lives here in Lauderhill.
Right.
So I have women that are coming from different areas to share their stories. And all of these women have amazing stories of survival and what that looks like and how they survived, where they are now in their careers and what they're doing to that they have overcome those types of abuse. And these women are not ashamed either. So not every woman is going to tell their story, but
Right.
there's a way that you can be made whole in your emotions as well.
Right.
You know, you don't need to stay in that bondage and be angry and continue to, to date the same type of men or marry the same type of women. So when you see women that are surviving that looks like you and I, it's like, okay, if they can do this, I can do it. You just have to be willing to do the work.
That's right. Godfrey Del Rio, what is his role in this whole event happening on Thursday?
Godfrey is a stylist to the stars, is what he's done. He studied in Paris. He was there and got all of his training there. He came back to South Florida. He oversaw 45 stores in South Florida. He did all of the fashion shows here for 45 stores, and then from there he went to Saks and Neiman's and Bloomingdale's. He's traveled around the world doing this, and so he has designers that he's bringing. So he will oversee the entire fashion show, and we're going to give you a complete European feel. So this will be like attending a show in Milan, and that's what he's bringing. The models will have that same look. The clothing is completely couture. It is not your everyday type fashion show. And you will have that feel like you're sitting on the runway of a Milan show.
Nice.
And if someone hasn't been to a Milan show, you would have to Google that one because I couldn't even describe. I couldn't describe it to you. But it's going to be a phenomenal event. And this type of show has not been done since the days of the Ebony Fashion Fair.
Nice.
And so fashion, like I said, fashion is my background. And so I'm doing this to raise monies for domestic violence. The first country, since I'm on a roll of all of this, the first country that I want to go and raise funds for is Jamaica. That's the first country that I want to go to.
Well,
and that's because in 2018, I went to the diaspora at the Miramar Culture Center. And when they talked about what was going on in Jamaica when it came to domestic violence and the education system, I remember sitting next to my friend, Commissioner Denise Grant. I was sitting next to her and I was
Yes.
fighting back tears. And I left there saying, and I didn't even tell her about this. I
Mm-hmm.
left there saying, I've got to be able to do something. I sent computers, school bags, pencils, paper. I sent all of that over to Jamaica. And I just started to tell her about it not long ago. But I just believe do the work, and eventually someone will recognize that you're doing the work. And so when I saw the violence over there, and culturally it's different
Yes.
there than it is here. We could call 911, but you can't call 911 there. And so it's
Yeah,
then
it's a little bit
how do
different in Jamaica.
right, right. But the reality is for me, it's still a woman.
Yeah.
And it's a woman that I can help make a difference. If I can go there and do there what I am doing here and raise funds for a domestic violence organization over there to help empower the women, that's the first country I want to
You
go
know,
to.
since you're looking at them, I I would suggest, um, and I have no problems making these suggestions openly. Jamaican women of Florida. I came across
Hmm.
them recently. Um, as a matter of fact, I have a representative coming back to the show before the end of this month as a guest. Um, I would love to connect you with Jamaican women of Florida, with if who I know there, and
Okay, that would be phenomenal.
you can and see what can happen there. And I'll definitely connect you with Sylvia Sharps in Palm Beach, in West Palm. And there is one other person who will also be a guest talking about domestic violence here on the night shift. Um, I will connect you with her also. I'm leaving that one as a little bit of a surprise to some people.
That will be great. Because, when you get us who have the passion for this, we are a force to be reckoned with because we
Yes.
get it.
You know,
We get it.
and hearing you talk, I want to find out who is working with the men in all of this. So if on your journey you come across anybody who is working in with men as it relates to domestic violence, whether it is reformed abusers or even survivors themselves.
I do know of an organization. I don't remember his name offhand, but I do know how to get the contact information. There is a event that happens once a year. It didn't happen last year because of the storm
Mm-hmm.
that came, but there's an event that comes to South Florida once a year, and it's strictly for men. And I tell you that there's men from everywhere that shows up for this event. I'm sorry, I don't remember the
I know
man's
that
name.
used to happen with Promise Keepers,
Mm-hmm.
um, but that tends to be more religious based, which is not a problem at all. I've been to Promise Keepers.
I tell you, you'd be surprised of what's going on in churches nowadays and the information that they're receiving. It's
I'm not surprised
unbelievable.
at all.
And I think, let me look. I think I have this. It's, I did a, let's see. And because I'm looking for it, I probably won't find
Yeah,
it.
you won't find it because you're looking for it right now.
Yes,
The good thing
we
is that
do.
we're connected, so
Yes, yes,
I will get the
we
information.
can. Okay, here we go. Wait. Okay, here we go. I did find it.
Oh,
Um,
sweet.
this is for the church. There was a survey done of 6,000 pastors. 6,000 pastors were asked their attitude toward domestic violence. The question was, how would they counsel a woman who had been seeking help from abuse in her marriage? 26% will tell her husband it's her job to submit. 26% will tell her it's her job to submit to her husband. Now, these are pastors.
Right.
6,000 pastors were interviewed. 25% will actually tell her that it was her fault she was beaten because she didn't submit. 50% of pastors said that they will tell that woman to stay in that violent situation, that it would be better to stay than to be divorced. That's 50%.
That's crazy.
50% of pastors out of 6,000.
That's crazy.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to say something that is quite a radical statement to some, and to some others, they'd say, that's what I've been saying forever. This is, when you hear things like that, is reasons why people are leaving churches.
Yes, I agree.
This is why people are not into organized religion. And I'm not saying they're not into being spiritual. I'm not saying they're not into a belief system. I'm saying into organized religion. Because of the individuals who are in leadership roles and some of the positions that they take with certain things. This here is a prime example of that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying all, but in some churches, when you have those who are big donors in church, a lot of their behavior is pushed to the side.
Yes.
Their behavior is overlooked. But in the meantime, that individual is suffering. So then you're told you can't get divorced, and God hates divorce. There's so many different components. I'm working on I already have the topic. I've been working on this for about 2 years now. The series is called Breaking Out of Darkness.
Right.
And about 2 years ago, I talked about it via a Facebook Live post. And the last time that I had looked at it, had over 3,000 people had viewed that, because I was talking about the darkness that is associated with abuse, whether you're in church or out of church. Because I deal with two types of audiences. Because I am an ordained minister, I deal with that audience, and then I also deal with the secular audience.
Right.
Because Christians believe one set of things, and the secular audience, they just believe whatever it is that they believe, but rights and wrongs. So we have to come in and give the proper information, because abusers need to be held accountable for their behavior. And society, whether in church or out of church, don't continue to blame the woman,
the victims,
for what someone else has done. Again, that's why I said that I want this facility, because women want to have somewhere to go. They want to come out of their abused homes, and women who are in 6 and 7 income brackets, they're not going to the shelters that we see every day. They're just not going.
This is true.
So they have to have somewhere that they go based on the lifestyle that they've been living. And then those who have lived in lower income brackets, we need to have a better place for them to live. We thank God for the shelters that are here in the Tri-Counties, but it's not enough beds for. There's more of a demand there is than we have beds for those who are in need.
You can't tell me about it, because I know people in social services, and I've heard the plight. I've seen the numbers. I used to work for the Salvation Army. I know people in the Salvation Army still. I grew up going to church in the Salvation Army. I am fully connected still with the Salvation Army. So I know exactly what that is like. And I know that there's a shortage. I know there's a need. So
Right.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. And I even have to wrap up. I told you time would go before we know it. Here's one of the things. Even if everybody gave $1, $1, and they got a friend to give $1, that's a start to something great.
Yes.
Multiply that by 5. So each person give $5. Think of the change. Think of the help that they can provide for some people.
Right.
And mostly we've been talking about women, but I'm pretty sure that you're not going to alienate a man that is coming in and saying, listen, I need help. The family, yes, is the facility that you're looking at, yes, is for women and for women and children because it's needed.
Right.
But there's no turning away a man coming to say, I need some help in the sense of giving direction or aid, whichever way. So everybody's getting helped with this.
Right, because I believe men need to have a place as well, not just when it's the difference is men just don't talk
They're not
about
coming forward. Listen,
No.
I say it all the time. People, we need to talk. Find somebody to talk to. And there are people out there that are willing to listen, that won't go and talk your business. Because I think that is one of the biggest fears. People going and talking what you've told them. So they don't want to talk. That's shame.
Yes.
But listen.
And the shame is major.
Yeah.
The shame is major. I mean, when you look at the women that are being abused now, in some cases, 20 years later, they're finally talking about it. What does society say? Well, why are you talking about it? Were you benefited or you didn't benefit? Or, what's the gain in it now? But what no one understands is those who don't understand it, you don't know the trauma that they went through for the 20 years.
Right.
So if one person shares and another person, it helps your confidence. That's why I say you can't shame me for what my experience is.
There you go.
I took the shame out of that. But what I do is I go back and I empower someone else.
Yes.
I don't use this as a calling card either. And what I mean by that, I don't run around telling the world that this is my experience. But at the same time, if my experience helps someone else to leave or give them courage to leave,
there you
then
go.
I have done my job.
Yes.
I have done my job.
Yes. Charlene, how can people get in touch with you? How can people get tickets for the event? How can people donate?
The tickets, you can donate or get tickets from my website. That's www.coffeebreakwithcharlie.org. And that's Charlie as CHARLEY. So that's coffeebreakwithcharlie.org. Or you can reach me via email, cbwc@live.com. That's the acronyms for Coffee Break with Charlie. Or you can reach me at 561-542-8995. That's 561-542-8995. But for tickets and donation, please go to www.coffeebreakwithcharlie.org.
Thank you, Charlene. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We will.
That email address, they can also reach me if they would like for me to do workshops, whether it's a women's group, a church group, any form of group that you create, whether it's a teenage group and you would like for me to come and educate your women and children, I can do that as well. And you can email me at cbwc@live.com. Just please write something in the subject line so that I know what you're inquiring about, because I don't open emails that I don't recognize unless you have something in that subject line that identifies that you're looking for my services.
Right.
But my website gives you all that information as well.
Thank you very much, Charlene. We'll talk
Thank
some
you.
more. We'll talk
Thank
again. Please tell your kids that I'd love to chat with them.
you. I
I,
will. I will.
if not all of them, one of them, two of them, it doesn't really matter. I just love to talk to them. Because
Okay, I will. I will. Thank you for this time, and I look forward to seeing some of the listening audience
hmm
at the show. And if you're coming from this show, please identify yourself to me so that I know who you are.
right, yeah. And I have to connect you with a few people. I'll be sending you some information.
Okay.
Um, and we will talk.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you to the listening audience.
Pleasure was mine.
Okay.
I don't know where the time went, ladies and gentlemen. Charlene took all of my time.
Well, I tell people I could talk about this. I could talk about this all day long because I used to be the victim. I was stuck in a psyche of not knowing how to get out and wanting better for the children, wanting better for myself. So I fought very hard
hmm
to break that cycle. And so I know what it's like for the women who are trying to come out and no resources. And I was thousands of miles away from home, from family and friends.
Yeah.
So I get it. And that's why I work hard at providing a way for women and children now. I just make it pretty. I don't do all the ugly stuff. I come up with pretty names so that when women show up, they feel good about themselves. Because when you feel better, you can do better. It may
Yes.
take some time, but you can do better. You can.
Yes, you can. Before you go, I want to, as you're here, give recognition to my other sponsors. Althea with her healing heavenly hands, and again, for those of you who were tuning in last week, go ahead, go to kevinstew.com, go down to the comment section, and say where the night shift with Kevin Stew started. Be number 48 to send me a message with that answer, and you get a free massage courtesy of Althea and her Healing Heavenly Hands, licensed massage therapist for 19 going on 20 years. If you're in Broward County, North Miami-Dade, or South Palm Beach County, you get to enjoy the luxury of that massage. She comes to you, she brings a table, she has her oils, she has everything. Melissa won last month. You can be a winner this month. Charlene, I know after this event you're going to need a massage.
Well,
I'll send you her number too.
thank you.
Thanks to JTMC Enterprises for sponsoring also. They take care of your tour management, your bookings for your events, your promotions, your social media management. You give them a call, 954 300 2574. Give them a call. Tell them you heard about them right here on the night shift to DJ Kevin Stew and GMAT Music Solutions, bringing your event to life. Listen, Charlene, it's a network right here. So when I tell you I have some people to connect you with, I have some people to connect you with
Okay, good.
outside of my sponsors.
Good.
I just wanted you to know of some of my sponsors also.
Thank
No
you.
shame in my game.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
I think when you empower a woman, you save a woman, you save a family.
I like that. Is that your tagline?
Yes, that's one of.
I like
When you
that.
save a woman, you save a family.
My tagline is having acceptance through enlightenment.
Awesome. Awesome.
And I'll tell the story behind that another time.
Okay.
All right, you take care now, Charlene. I know it's way past your bedtime, so thank you very much.
Thank you, too. Have a good evening.
All right, you too. Well, it's morning, no.
Yes. All right.
All right.
Bye.
Good night. Ladies and gentlemen.
This is how I leave you. DJ Kevin Stew on the night shift.
Wait, is what is going on? Wait, where is that coming from? I tell you, boy, strange things are happening. Strange. Ah, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for passing on a word to someone. Thank you for your contributions, whichever way you chose to do it. I have a one song to play, and I can't even play the whole song, but I'm going to get out of here in just a few moments. This is GAE. Track is called Note to Self from her album Reggae Prescription. GAE is also a survivor. I can talk about it because she's been on this show talking about it.
Well, in comes the one called Miss J.E.
My song is a reminder, a verbal note to self. Melody set in motion to coax me through my doubt. A song that's sung for freedom. From a life left up to chance, it's sung to set a good vibration that begs my soul to dance. So I'll forgive myself, I'll forgive you too. Give myself a break and give one to you. Leave the dust behind, look ahead and do the best I can, and to Jah and self be true. I only knew what I knew, a domesticated view, reacting from my vantage point, and didn't question who had the real true answer, had what I was seeking, until I looked to Jah, who had me in his keeping. So I'll forgive myself, I'll forgive.
This is where I get on out of here. Catch y'all later. It's Healthy Love Night.
Break and give one to you.
10 p.m. right here, kevinstew.com.
Leave the dust behind, look ahead and do the
Catch y'all later.
and to Jah and
Let
self.
me go run around the bed now, see if I can go catch up on some sleep. Stay tuned for more. The discussion continues. It's time to be aware.
Pieces scattered, fragmented from the start, can be put back together.
Catch y'all later, okay?
It's a chosen kind of art.
I'm out of here.
When being in the moment is priceless, consider the ability to share that moment. If you can video it, you can broadcast it. And Pulse E-Media Group has the tools you need. Weddings, birthdays, funerals, graduations, church services, parties, seminars, you name it. Pulse E-Media Group can provide you with a secure medium controlled by you to broadcast your event. Contact us at www.pulsemediagroup.com for more information. Pulse E-Media Group, when being in the moment is priceless.